Homage to fundamental teacher Buddha Shakyamuni, homage to wisdom, warrior Manjushri, homage to all lineage benevolent masters. The Dharma, infinitely profound and subtle, is rarely encountered even in a million eons. Now we are able to hear, study and follow it. May we fully realize Tathagata's true meaning. In order to liberate all sentient beings from samsara, please everyone generate supreme and excellent bodhicitta. Below, I will teach the four immeasurables from the words of my perfect teacher. Among the four immeasurables, we have already completed the teaching on boundless equanimity. Starting from today, we will teach the second one, cultivating boundless loving kindness. Cultivating the four immeasurables, or in other words, cultivating bodhicitta, is extremely important because many of our past practitioners, some didn't even have a theoretical foundation. Some people only understand a little in theory. But they haven't truly integrated the meaning of the theory into their minds, haven't engaged in repeated meditation practice in this area. As a result, between the Dharma and the person, just as the Kadampa master said, there is a great distance. The Dharma is the Dharma, the person is the person. So although the Dharma indeed has the power to tame our afflictions, the Dharma contains many methods for our mind stream to merge with the Dharma and attain liberation. Such excellent blessings, but because we don't practice, we are unable to correspond with the Dharma. Therefore, practice is extremely crucial. I think many of our Dharma friends are now practicing and should be doing quite well. Especially this time, everyone is going to practice the 500,000 preliminaries and cultivate bodhicitta. We must treat this very seriously. Otherwise, we may not often have such good opportunities. Now, let's teach boundless loving kindness among the four immeasurables. After cultivating boundless equanimity to the standard level, it's best to reach the standard. To completely reach the standard would probably be difficult for us as ordinary beings. There would be certain difficulties, but generally speaking, when attachment to others and clinging to our own side is not very strong, basically achieving a state of balance between self and others, this state is very important. Otherwise, if we, who practice bodhicitta, who practice preliminaries, even those who practice the great perfection, if our minds of attachment and aversion towards self and others are extremely strong, we need not speak of their realization. Basically, from their behavior, we can see how high their realization is. Next, we cultivate boundless loving kindness. What is boundless loving kindness? Taking all sentient beings of the three realms equally as the object of great loving kindness. Then cultivating just like parents, nurturing their children. First, we treat all sentient beings with loving compassion. Then, just like parents nurturing their own children, for example, when parents nurture their infants, they completely disregard their child's confused behavior and their own hardships and difficulties. They only think of ways to make their children peaceful, happy, and comfortable. Making them live particularly peaceful and comfortable lives is their only goal. They would never think about how our child has a bad temper, or how difficult and laborious it is for me to raise him in the nurturing process. They would never think this way, so we should contemplate. Sometimes when we see worldly parents loving compassion for their children, it is indeed quite intense. A few years ago, during the Wenchuan earthquake, there was a mother who, during the disaster, used her own body above to protect a child. After several days, this child was rescued, but the mother had already died. Later, the rescue personnel discovered a text message written on the mother's phone. She said, "My dearest baby, beloved child, if you survive, you must. Remember that your mother will always love you." At that time, they all felt that so-called maternal love is not something we can ordinarily describe with words. Previously, in another place, when an earthquake also occurred, it said that after 8 days, a child was rescued, but the mother had long since died. This child was 3 years old. The only reason the child survived was that the mother had pierced her own skin and fed her blood to the child. Because of this, the child didn't die, but the mother had already died. Even animals have many examples. When watching Animal World, we also know that animals also have a certain love for their mothers, so mothers have special affection for their children. In the process of cultivating bodhicitta, this is particularly crucial and very important. So generally speaking, when we encounter all kinds of sentient beings, among sentient beings there may be those who are particularly stubborn and difficult to transform. No matter how well we treat them, these beings often insult and discriminate against us, but we must disregard everything and continuously love and protect them. Similarly, our body, speech, and mind should do our utmost to be used for various skillful means that bring happiness and virtue to all sentient beings in this life and future lives. We must ensure that all our actions are for sentient beings, for all sentient beings, considering their happiness in this life and future lives. So it is also said in the Itivutaka, if one generates or cultivates loving kindness toward one sentient being, this merit is immeasurable, how much more so for all sentient beings. So we must definitely think of sentient beings. When we cultivate loving kindness, the object is sentient beings. And making sentient beings attain happiness, this is the definition of loving kindness. In the process of practice, each person should contemplate repeatedly, why do we meditate on each sentient being this way? Every sentient being hopes for their own happiness and joy. The only thing they pursue is personal happiness and joy. No one wishes for suffering and sorrow, but they completely don't know that the cause of happiness is practicing virtue. Instead, they constantly commit the 10 non-virtuous actions. Therefore, what they seek and what they do have become completely contradictory. Most sentient beings in our world today are indeed like this. They do think about wanting to be happy. Any sentient being in the world wants to attain happiness, but what they do and what they think are completely going in opposite directions, completely contradictory. After seeing such phenomena, we should silently contemplate in our hearts. All these beings who seek happiness but only experience suffering, if they could each fulfill their wishes and each attain their joy, how wonderful that would be. Contemplate this way repeatedly. We think this way. Each sentient being, each according to their own wishes, each sentient being reaching their own goals, how joyful, how wonderful that would be. We continuously think this way. If toward one sentient being one does not generate anger but wishes to give them happiness, this is called loving. In the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, when speaking of virtue, it speaks of loving virtue, loving compassion. Loving compassion is actually like this. If toward one sentient being we do not generate anger, but think of every way to give all our happiness to them, to bestow it upon them. This is so-called loving kindness. The definition of loving kindness is actually, we give happiness to them, we offer all happiness to them. This meaning is called loving kindness. Finally, contemplate. Not only do I myself long for happiness, all sentient beings similarly hope for happiness. In this point, there is no difference from myself. Continue practicing until truly generating such conviction. Continue practicing until such conviction arises. Continuously practice. We know that all sentient beings in the 3 realms all want to attain happiness and are unwilling to experience any suffering. Actually, all sentient beings in this world all hope for happiness and don't want to attain suffering. Since I am like this, then all other sentient beings actually have no difference from me whatsoever. So Patrul Rinpoche's Vajra words. We must indeed understand the profound meaning explained within. Usually we should always contemplate, especially when we practice arousing bodhicitta. While reciting verses of arousing bodhicitta, we must definitely practice such methods. Until such conviction has not arisen in our mind stream, repeatedly practice continuously. Just as it's also said in the scriptures, loving bodily actions, loving speech actions, loving mental actions, the virtuous actions of body, speech, and mind are actually sustained by our loving compassion. If our body acts with compassionate behavior, our speech also speaks with compassionate words. Our mind also frequently generates such compassionate hearts. The words spoken from our mouths, the actions done by our hands, absolutely cannot harm other sentient beings. From beginning to end, we must be genuinely loving and kind. According to the way of the Bodhisattva, it also teaches this way. When seeing sentient beings, look upon them with sincere compassion. Even when looking at other sentient beings, We should also be pleasant and cheerful, absolutely cannot glare with anger. In our daily words, actions, conduct, and behavior, we must definitely treat others with compassionate eyes. Usually, when we see any sentient being of different status, we must definitely look upon them with compassionate eyes, with pleasant and cheerful expression. We cannot stare at others with very painful eyes, or when treating them with various behaviors. We should know that bodhisattvas have different behaviors of bodhisattvas. Looking at sentient beings with compassionate eyes, one attains great majesty and wonderful complexion. Buddhist sutras also teach this way. If we look at sentient beings with compassionate eyes, we will attain wonderful complexion in the future. Introduction to the Middle Way also teaches this way. Why are many of us so ugly in this lifetime? Actually, this reason is that our body, our behavior, has a certain relationship with harming sentient beings. Here it also tells a story. Once there was a tyrannical and domineering official who habitually looked at others with sideways glances. As a result, in his next life he was reborn as hungry ghost, eating leftovers under a household stove. Sutras also describe the faults of looking at noble beings with hostile eyes and falling into hell. In Buddhist sutras there are also many such stories. In the sutra on the seal of definite and indefinite rebirths, at that time Buddha told Bodhisattva Manjushri, "If some people look at bodhisattvas with angry eyes, then their fault exceeds gouging out the eyes of all sentient beings in the 3 realms, etc." There are very many faults, so as taught in the Buddhist sutras. Usually when we apply loving kindness in daily life, we can see from this person's behavior what kind of attitude they display. If their words, actions, and conduct do not have any special hidden intention or special purpose of teaching disciples, generally speaking, they should treat sentient beings with a particularly gentle tone or look upon them with compassionate eyes. This is the most basic behavior of practicing bodhisattva conduct, so I think we should cultivate loving kindness. In practice, actually some people, when in meditation, cultivate loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta, and consider their practice quite good. But actually, after you come out of meditation, your practice is completely different from what you cultivated. If you frequently treat everyone with anger, then your meditation and post-meditation are completely different. The books we study in school, shouldn't we use them in society? If what you learn in school is a virtuous force, but when you get to society, what you apply are all evil behaviors, then what you learn and what you practice are contradictory. The same principle applies practicing Mahayana Buddhism. Actually, whether you meditate or not, retreat or not, depends on your usual behavior. If your usual behavior towards sentient beings is truly like treating your own parents, or like parents treating their only child, then it shows our practice has some success. If our behavior in the process of usually interacting with sentient beings has very great anger and particularly violent temper, whether in speech, bodily behavior, or mental discriminations, if everything is in an evil state, then 100% we can say their practice realization is particularly poor. Below it teaches that all bodily deportment should be gentle and refined, giving people a comfortable and pleasant feeling, completely eliminate harming all sentient beings, wholeheartedly benefit sentient beings. This is bodily behavior. No matter what kind of bodily behavior that brings harm to others looks particularly terrifying. After seeing it, people dare not approach. This cannot be so. It's the same with the body. Every word spoken from the mouth is also the same, cannot contain the meaning of despising others, insulting or mocking others, must speak truly honest, pleasant and agreeable words. This is usual speech. These are all very easy in writing. The words of my perfect teacher has nothing incomprehensible. Everyone certainly understands. The key is when each sentence is implemented in one's own behavior. How well it's done depends on one's own practice. The mind is also the same. When benefiting others, absolutely cannot hope to gain benefits for oneself. Wholeheartedly delighting in benefiting others, not hoping to receive good rewards. The way of the Bodhisattva also teaches this, wholeheartedly benefiting and bringing joy to others, not hoping to receive good karmic rewards for oneself, not hoping to receive good rewards, not hoping to get such things, if on the surface it appears you are benefiting sentient beings, but actually you want to find some benefit for yourself. If ultimately your goal is still yourself, then this kind of practice is definitely unreasonable. Also cannot rely on false, gentle deportment, warm speech, and other means. To make people regard oneself as a bodhisattva, great master, practitioner, or peaceful person, while striving to achieve one's inner goals, the only desire in one's heart should be the noble spirit of benefiting others. Others all say, "Oh, this person might be remarkable. Look how he walks in such a way, speaks so gently, and has no discriminating thoughts in his mind." Once there was a person, later I heard, perhaps at the beginning, some people's behavior was particularly peaceful. People who just start learning Buddhism, people who just become monastics, often cannot stand some old practitioners. Why are practitioners like this? They should be like this and that. He begins to stand up and often teaches others. When he walks, it's also like this and that. When speaking, it should be like this and that. But after 10 or 20 years have passed, if your behavior remains consistently peaceful and gentle, then you can be considered a true practitioner otherwise. Our temporary renunciation, temporary behaviors, cannot show a person's level of practice realization at all. At the beginning, some people go certain masters to practice the great perfection. After practicing the great perfection for 2 or 3 days, they constantly say they should abide in a state of luminosity. They keep talking about the 2 words, luminosity. It feels particularly comfortable when they say it. But later, the luminous state gradually becomes a dark state. So we should frequently make such aspirations in our hearts repeatedly. This aspiration is very important. When everyone recites verses of arousing bodhicitta, sometimes visualize the refuge field, sometimes visualize the content of boundless equanimity and boundless loving kindness. Sometimes make aspirations yourself. It's impossible for these discriminating thoughts to not arise at all. To abide completely in one state is also impossible. But while reciting, abiding in a virtuous state is very important. This is very important. Then how should we, ordinary beings, make aspirations? May I, in all successive rebirths throughout life after life, not harm even a single hairpore of other sentient beings and wholeheartedly benefit them. This is very important. Throughout all our lives, we must definitely make this aspiration. In this lifetime, we may not necessarily attain liberation. Even if we don't attain liberation, then in the vast, boundless samsara, life after life, we will certainly take successive rebirths. In the process of taking successive rebirths, we should not harm sentient beings. The wise should know, compassion does not harm life. This is taught in the short sutra on discerning karmic retribution. The wise, those with wisdom, should understand, compassion does not harm life. We must love and have compassion for all sentient beings, not harm sentient beings. Actually, if a person can uphold this one precept throughout their life, I truly feel it would be very complete and perfect. But in today's society, upholding even this one precept is very difficult. If I truly cannot accomplish this in certain behaviors, I should earnestly confess and vow life after life, never to harm any sentient being, especially toward those who depend on us, our family, servants, animals, etc. We should treat them with loving care, down to the watchdogs. We must never beat or exploit them in ways that cause excessive suffering, especially when we speak of having compassion for all beings and wanting to liberate all beings. But in reality, toward those close to us, our family, friends, and dear ones, even toward these beings who are connected to us, if we cannot love and protect them or cultivate compassion toward them, then we simply cannot speak of Mahayana bodhicitta. If we can't even get along with our own parents and can't care for those around us, this is very important. It's not that Patrul Rinpoche is saying here, That we should especially care only for those close to us, it's not like that. If we start from those around us and begin with ourselves but completely disregard those around us, then genuine compassion will be very difficult to truly arise. So at all times and in all places, in every action and word, every thought should be based on kindness. Actually, our constant cultivation, especially of loving kindness, is particularly important. In the past, Ji Xiaolan had a work called Fantastic Tales. In these notes, it tells of a bhikkhuni who once prepared to buy many offerings on Avalokiteshvara's birthday to make offerings to the Bodhisattva. Feeling somewhat tired and weary, she rested for a moment. While resting, Avalokiteshvara appeared and said, "Rather than offering to my statue, it would be better to give these offerings to the many refugees outside the wall. The merit of giving to these refugees far exceeds offering to me by more than 10 times. Later, when she actually went outside to look, there were indeed 5 or 6 refugees, and she gave away all the offerings as charity. Sometimes we see that giving to sentient beings is still very important, because giving to sentient beings can actually resolve their suffering, while when making offerings, of course, accumulating merit through such actions is also very good. But sometimes I think, whether in Han regions or Tibetan areas, many people make extremely generous offerings to great masters, while for pitiful orphans, elderly widows and widowers, or sick people, those who spend money to truly help them, are not necessarily many truly, whether in terms of monetary value or the value of offerings versus charitable giving. If the object of your offering truly possesses bodhicitta and is a great master or Buddha bodhisattva free from attachment, there is certainly great merit. But generally speaking, Buddhas and bodhisattvas don't particularly lack money. It's like adding flowers to brocade. Brocade is already expensive. Is it necessary to add flowers on top? Better to help the pitiful beings around us, motivated by your compassion and loving kindness. Giving to them this merit should far exceed the other. I have this feeling. Here it also explains that those beings born in this life as servants or watchdogs, suffering bullying and rejection from others, are experiencing the ripening of karma from when they were powerful in past lives and created the negative karma of insulting and despising others. Now, they have personally come before us to begin repaying old karmic debts. There's no choice. In past lives, you became extremely powerful and often bullied others, and in this life you become a servant. So sometimes, when we see monarchs or rulers with wealth and power, they appear to have great merit, but they don't necessarily have great merit. A former servant may truly become a high official today, while today's high official may become a servant in future cycles of existence. This alternating rotation is the nature and pattern of samsara. If we could truly see the continuous cycle of life in samsara, anyone could potentially experience the extreme terror of samsara, but we lack clairvoyance. Many people blindly pursue and blindly do many things. If now we rely on having wealth and power to bully others, then in future lives we will similarly become servants to others to repay old karmic debts. So, toward those beings who are beneath our station, we should have even more kindness and compassion. Our respect, reverence, and admiration for those above us is actually quite abundant and not necessarily lacking. Especially when people have wealth and influence, many are extremely loyal to them, showing respect and praise. These are not lacking. But when a being has no one to rely on and is pitifully alone, even a smile or a word of comfort or a small amount of money will be truly unforgettable for their entire life. So we should especially help pitiful beings. In Mahayana Buddhism, indeed, look at how Buddha Shakyamuni acted when he was on the causal path. Though we call ourselves followers of the Buddha, sometimes when I think about it, it's truly shameful. I often think that when Guru Rinpoche was alive, some of his actions weren't noticeable. The Guru also said, "When I'm alive, you may not know many of my qualities, but when I leave this world, you'll feel that relying on me was perhaps the most valuable connection of all." Indeed, after he left the world, sometimes in our long journey through life, we discover that everything he did was for the benefit of sentient beings. But are our own actions like this? When we examine our own minds, we can say it generates regret or a sense of shame, so we should have love and joy for sentient beings. But how to put this love and joy into actual practice depends on each person's level and what methods they use to implement it, especially toward one's own parents, and long-term patience using all three doors to benefit them brings inconceivable merit and benefit. Especially we must help and care for our own parents and sick people. As Venerable Atisha also said, if one acts with compassion toward distant guests, long-term patients, and elderly parents, this is completely the same as actually practicing the great compassion treasury of emptiness, what Venerable Atisha mentioned. First, distant guests who come from far away with no familiar people and no one to care for them, especially when coming to Tibetan areas. Altitude sickness is severe and the climate is unsuitable. At such times, in life and death critical moments, if someone gives them even just a bottle of warm water or a little food, they may remember it for their entire life. So distant guests are like this, and long-term patients also need care. Not only do we need to care for them, even the Buddha would care for them. Many past stories also teach this way. The Buddha said in the Inconceivable Light Bodhisattva Sutra, "Neither food nor treasures can repay parents' kindness. To repay fathers' and mothers' kindness, what is most important? Guiding them toward the true Dharma is truly offering to both parents. This is truly making offerings to them, truly giving to them, or truly benefiting them. Of course, as will be explained later, we should have aspiration toward the true Dharma for our parents. Especially, parents treat their children with utmost care and kindness as heavy as mountains. If when parents are elderly and frail beyond endurance, we hurt their feelings, this is truly unfilial and the transgression is particularly severe. Our great teacher, Buddha Shakyamuni, to repay his mother's kindness, went to the heaven of the 33 to teach Dharma to his mother. This is described in detail in the Sutra of Mental Contemplation. The Buddha also taught in other sutras, such as the Ekottara Agama. Even if a son carries his parents on his left and right shoulders, circumambulating the earth in service, it would still be difficult to repay parents' kindness. This is taught in the Ekottara Agama, carrying mother on the right shoulder and father on the left, circumambulating all of Jambudvipa actually. Such service may not necessarily repay parents' kindness. If one leads parents to enter the true Dharma, then one can repay their kindness. The scriptural citation just quoted means if we can truly lead our parents to enter the true Dharma, lead them to take refuge, take vows, and have faith in the three jewels. This is truly the greatest repayment of kindness. The Vinaya also teaches that placing parents each on one's shoulders and circumambulating all of Jambudvipa may not necessarily repay parents' kindness. What is the only method of repaying kindness? Those who previously lacked faith, let them have faith. Those who previously didn't keep precepts, let them keep precepts. Those who were previously stingy, let them practice generosity. Those who were previously ignorant, let them accept and reject karma with wisdom. Only this way can one truly repay parents' kindness. So regarding those around us, we say we cultivate bodhicitta and generate bodhicitta. But if we don't actually help those around us, that would be truly regrettable. Therefore, caring for our parents, patients, and guests should be said to be very reasonable. Some people asked me, a monastic asked me a couple days ago, "I want to send some money to my parents, is that acceptable?" I said, this should be acceptable. We've often taught this before. Perhaps you just haven't paid attention. When we taught the treasury of Abhidharma before, we also said, though they are not noble beings, making offerings to one's own parents and to those in their final existence brings inconceivable merit. Master Vasubandhu also taught this way. So generally, regarding one's own parents, regardless of one's status, even if one is a monastic, offering food obtained through alms to parents is actually reasonable, and repaying kindness is very reasonable. The same applies to patients, including what's taught in the Vinaya. Some of the Sangha's property can also be permitted for them. The Sangha's property and money can be distributed to patients, So some people who understand precepts a little when slightly ill don't want to recite sutras. I'm sick, you must bring me the sutra recitation money. But if you're not sick and pretending to be sick, the Buddha has not given permission for this. If one is truly a patient, it may have even more merit than making offerings to noble beings. I've told this story before. There was Master Mingshu who went to Mount Wutai to pay respects to Manjushri. When he arrived at Mount Wutai, he saw a particularly unusual monk. He thought this must be Manjushri and prostrated to him. That person thought he was Manjushri, so they both began prostrating to each other. It turned out neither was. When they looked, both were not Manjushri. Then they stayed together for 3 days and nights. It seems it was at a monastery on the eastern summit. Originally, Kempo, Tsultrim, Lodro and I once circumambulated the 5 peaks together. We didn't circumambulate the southern peak, but went from the central, western and northern peaks. At the northern peak we saw many sheep herders and horse herders. "Oh, where are you going?" Some people on the road spoke to us and we couldn't understand some of what they said, saying, "Where are you going?" Then when we reached the central peak, the year His Holiness went there, we were all a bit tired, took some food and slept for a long time. In the evening we reached the eastern peak and stayed there, but we weren't used to burning coal and got headaches, nearly died. The next day when we both came out we were somewhat dazed and had great difficulty going down the mountain. More than 20 years have passed. Now, when we too sometimes talk about it, the memory is still fresh. Those 2 monks also stayed at a monastery on the eastern peak. Then one of the monks, the rather strange monk that Mingshu had encountered, became ill. Moreover, several monks around them in the monastery, their behavior was strange and not very proper. He didn't develop genuine faith in them. That monk was ill for several days, so he took care of him first. Then the patient said, "You came from far away to see Manjushri, not to care for me. You'd better go pay homage to your Manjushri and just abandon me." At first he felt reluctant, because they had, after all, 3 days and nights of companionship. But later he kept observing that his condition seemed quite serious. He could neither live nor die. Later he said, "Well then, I'll go pay homage to Manjushri first. After I see Manjushri, I'll come back to care for you while you recover slowly." Then he wanted to abandon him. When some people want to abandon others, their words sound very nice. "Take good care of yourself, I'm leaving." At this time he definitely wanted to abandon him. Some appear to use nice language, but actually they've completely given up. At this time, everyone must pay attention in the future. Then he said, "Rest well, I'll go pay homage first. I'll come back after a while to take good care of you." He thought maybe after a while the person might die. Then he went out, and after walking some distance, suddenly he heard a particularly loud sound behind him. When he looked, the monastery, the patient, and the improperly behaving monks from before had all disappeared, and only in the sky could he see some images of Manjushri before they vanished. At this time he felt particularly regretful. When he returned, an old monk also said to him, "On one hand you are quite arrogant, on the other hand, your pure perception at that time was inappropriate. Actually, if you had truly felt special compassion for the patient at that time, Manjushri would have truly appeared at that very moment. But because your mind stream at that time lacked compassion and loving kindness for this reason. Although Manjushri had temporarily associated with you, later observing your lack of genuine compassion, he flew away to distant places." Can we say it this way? There are such cases. So whether repaying parents' kindness or any of our virtuous actions, actually caring for patients, parents, and pitiful people, this is truly the core of Mahayana Buddhism. Everyone must remember this on their spiritual journey. Otherwise, many of us consider practice the most meaningful thing in our entire life, while benefiting sentient beings seems like a completely unrelated matter. Even if someone does it, this is just their personal hobby, something they like to do. Actually, benefiting sentient beings and our realization, our bodhicitta, and our future true fruition are all of one taste and one essence. Not understanding this state, therefore one must pay attention, find ways to repay parents' kindness and care for patients, etc. Furthermore, Guru Rinpoche Padmasambhava also once said, "Never let elderly people feel sad. Treat them with respectful protection. Especially toward parents and pitiful elderly people, we truly must not harm them or do things that make them sad, because when parents are alive, if we don't properly repay their kindness, don't properly offer to them or show filial respect, when they pass away, many people feel great regret. At that time, there's no way to remedy it. When parents have already passed away completely, oh, I should have called them more often, shouldn't have caused them suffering, etc. But actually, at this time, it's already too late. When seeing the poor, the elderly, and sick oppressed by various sufferings, those with nowhere to turn for refuge, think of them with great compassion and universal loving kindness. This is taught in the Flower Ornament Sutra. If we see poor people, elderly people, or patients, these pitiful people who have no refuge, we should use great compassion to comprehensively protect and have mercy on them. If we don't do this, all the actions of Mahayana Bodhisattvas cannot truly be explained. Our words and actions should be loving, harmonious, caring, and protective toward all people older than ourselves. In today's era, some among us constantly say we need to support our families and have no choice but to harm sentient beings. But actually, there are ways. Below it says, if we truly regard sentient beings as our own parents or as our most beloved children, there should be ways not to harm beings and to cultivate loving kindness. Observe sentient beings with loving kindness, as a mother remembers her only child. This is taught in the Sutra of Buddha, Recitation Samadhi. If we observe sentient beings with loving kindness with the same compassion as a mother caring for her child actually in our daily life, not harming sentient beings is not something that cannot be accomplished. Now, many people often say this, we are lay people. How can lay people get by without killing? Actually, even as lay people, living life according to Dharma is not very difficult. We are not without options in this world. It's just that our mental strength is too weak and many behaviors cannot be implemented in action. Long ago in Xinjiang, 2 novice monks practiced cultivation of noble Manjushri. They had already practiced for 12 years and eventually met Manjushri. Manjushri told them, "You two have no karmic connection with me. Your destined deity through all lifetimes is Avalokiteshvara. But Avalokiteshvara is now manifesting in the form of a Tibetan king, King Songtsen Gampo. You should go to meet him." At that time, Manjushri had not appeared for a long time, but when he later appeared, he told them this. So these two people, not knowing where this country was later, relying on their faith in Avalokiteshvara, they traveled aimlessly forward and finally arrived in Lhasa. Some say it was Medicine King Mountain, others say Duilong Mountain. They arrived at that place. They witnessed many people being killed and arrested and imprisoned, extremely tragic scenes. Some were sentenced to death entirely, others were beheaded or had ears cut off, eyes gouged out, and so forth. Extremely horrific scenes appeared before their eyes. They asked at that time what the reason was. People told them this was punishment ordered by the king. These two were extremely frightened in their hearts. This king is definitely not an emanation of Avalokiteshvara. We too might also be punished. We'd better flee quickly. Then they ran back, and the king learned of this. The king later found out. The king knew their situation through clairvoyance. Then he ordered ministers to ride horses to chase these two people. Later, on their way back, these two saw people pursuing them. They became even more fearful and terrified, then ran desperately. The people behind chased desperately and finally caught these two. After catching them, they brought them before King Songtsen Gampo. The king asked them, "Why were you running back?" And they explained the whole story, saying, Originally we heard you were an emanation of Avalokiteshvara and came to pay homage to you, but honestly, now it seems rather questionable. Does it look good?" He generally doesn't interfere and retreats by himself like this. At that time these two said this. The king comforted them. "You don't need to be afraid because Tibetan people are stubborn and difficult to tame. I manifested these illusions. All the people I ordered to be killed were my own magical emanations. Actually, I myself have never harmed even a hairpore of any sentient being." At that time, these two people initially didn't believe this. No matter what was said, they wanted to run back. Later the king brought them to a pure place. There used to be a book called Avalokiteshvara in Tibetan areas. This book describes this story in great detail. He brought these two to a grassland, then said, "Indeed, I did not kill these people. Some appear to be killed during the day, but are completely revived at night. If you don't believe this, do you have faith in Amitabha Buddha?" Then these two people from Xinjiang, are there people from Xinjiang and Tibetan areas? Then these two people from Xinjiang had mixed feelings about the Tibetan king. Later they said, "We do have faith in Amitabha Buddha regarding King Songtsen Gampo. We also have his image in paintings. His crown is wrapped in yellow or white silk." When he unwrapped it, the image of Amitabha Buddha truly appeared. They saw Amitabha Buddha's crown protuberance, such an image. At that time they also generated faith, but they still wanted to return. Later, the king said to them, "Now that you have met me, do you have any requests?" "Do you need anything?" They said, "We don't need anything now. We want to return home safely and quickly." Later the king gave them some provisions and a bag of fine sand, then said, "When you want to sleep, use the sandbag as a pillow and sleep like this. When hungry, you can eat with these provisions." After one day, they used the fine sand as a pillow and slept. When they woke up, they were already at their own front door. At that time, the fine sand had also turned into gold. But because of their faith at that time and developing wrong views about Avalokiteshvara's actions, they didn't achieve any spiritual accomplishments in this life. Actually, sometimes people happen to have good karmic connections, and the good karma to rely on or meet a spiritual teacher has ripened, but due to one's past negative karma and temporary circumstances, they develop wrong views about the teacher's actions and later don't receive the Dharma. These two people, I often think people are like this. When a person relies on a guru, if they respect all the guru's actions and teachings with special reverence, there will be very great benefit in this and future lives. If not, and they view the guru with a different attitude, it may create obstacles to practice. So these two didn't achieve any accomplishment in practice, but they did fulfill their wish to return home safely. So according to the above account, actually King Songtsen Gampo at that time ruled the entire government of the snowland of Tibet, and he had already governed parts of what now belongs to Asia. 4 kingdoms within Jambudvipa, as stated in other histories and the White Annals and many historical records. Many surrounding countries had already been conquered, all border armies had been conquered. He accomplished such vast deeds of defeating enemies and protecting relatives, yet never harmed even one hair paw of any sentient being. So now we are only maintaining small families like ant holes. How could there be no way to avoid harming sentient beings? Patrul Rinpoche here also says, if King Songtsen Gampo, with such vast governance, maintained it without harming any sentient being, how much more so for us now? Truly our families are no different from ant holes. Patrul Rinpoche used to often say our families are ant holes, ant holes. Sometimes we don't understand. This time I saw the earthquake in Japan at that time, truly in the tsunami waves when many high-rise buildings were swept in. Truly the families that people are so attached to actually have no difference from ant holes at all. So our current practice of creating karma to maintain our families is completely an excuse and unreasonable. It's best not to harm sentient beings. What is the consequence of harming sentient beings? Reaping the bitter fruits of one's actions, leading to experiencing countless sufferings as retribution in this and future lives. Even just in this present life, it cannot accomplish the slightest benefit, because if you kill someone, you will certainly have to pay with your life. If you owe debts, you will certainly have to repay them. Apart from wastefully squandering one's own wealth and resources, there is no one who has gained wealth by harming sentient beings and creating negative karma. This is absolutely impossible for anyone. Because of your actions and negative karma, ultimately becoming wealthy and forever happy, this never happens. Perhaps through killing and other means, you temporarily gain a little wealth, but the bitter fruits of the future are always waiting for you, always awaiting you. So these all have no real meaning. Therefore, when we cultivate boundless loving kindness, we must be like a mother bird raising her young. How does a mother bird raise her young? When raising her young, she first builds a particularly soft and comfortable nest, then covers them with her feathers to keep them warm. Before the chicks can fly, she consistently and gently cares for them with tender movements. She gradually, slowly lets them grow, continuing this way until they can fly. So each of us has generated Mahayana Bodhicitta. After generating Mahayana Bodhicitta around us, there are certainly very complex and very wild sentient beings. For these wild beings, first each of us should protect them wholeheartedly with our body, speech and mind. Use the Dharma to gradually guide them, gradually letting them. Only when they truly become mature do we let them go. Before this, we should stay close to beings and not abandon them. This is very important. Similarly, we must also, through bodily actions, verbal speech and mental thoughts, body, speech and mind, many things our body does should be for the sake of sentient beings. Actually, if we truly generate motivation to do things for sentient beings, it's glorious and meaningful. Whatever language we speak, try not to harm sentient beings. Try to speak meaningful words to sentient beings. Whatever thoughts arise in our minds, for us, ordinary beings, having all thoughts become virtuous, free from greed, hatred, and ignorance, would be somewhat difficult, but when afflictive thoughts arise, try to confess them, then try every possible way to generate loving thoughts toward others. With such virtuous body, speech, and mind, first start with the beings around us. Gradually this state, gradually this state, just as venerable Longchenpa teaches in the Great Chariot, a commentary on finding rest in the nature of the mind. As taught, this scope continuously expands and enlarges, then extending to all sentient beings throughout the three realms. This is truly cultivating boundless loving kindness. So, while practice preliminaries, everyone should also meditate on boundless loving kindness. If you truly practice this, as Patrul Rinpoche also said, it will certainly arise in your mind stream. This is a natural law. The only reason is that this is a natural law. If we don't practice, there's certainly no way. If you practice, for example, if there's a basin of water in front of you and you're extremely thirsty, if you drink it, it will certainly quench your thirst. This is a natural law. If you don't drink, it's impossible for the water to run in by itself and flow into your mouth. Impossible. But if you drink, then this water will correspond with your body. The same principle applies. This Dharma is completely something with special blessing power. If we practice it, we will certainly benefit in our mind stream. Therefore, I hope that in daily life, you still regularly practice bodhicitta. Don't think I practice when doing preliminaries. Now that preliminaries are finished, I'll throw the words of my perfect teacher 100 meters away and never care about it again. Actually, this isn't right. Such practices should be maintained until Buddhahood throughout one's lifetime, life after life. It's not like, I've finished preliminaries. Now I'm a great perfection practitioner. Preliminaries are finished. Preliminaries are never finished. We just first practice 500,000 preliminaries as a foundation. Actually, such boundless loving kindness must still be practiced until Buddhahood. The four immeasurables must still be practiced. Refuge practices must still be practiced. This isn't like practicing Qigong. With Qigong, you visualize, touch, and push a bit. Wow, that's enough. Now I'm finished practicing, I can give it up. It's not like that. So many people cannot distinguish between our practice and modern Qigong practice. How pitiful. I won't say more.
Bandharangara Padmasada Bandharangara Padmasada